Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering church around the world. The Afram Plains is located in the hinterland of Ghana, a vast territory and one of the most abandoned areas of the country, where over 50 church stations are scattered in more than 50 different villages, with only 2 priests to serve. One of these priests, Father Benedict Tinka, is here with us today to tell of his work in primary evangelization. Father Benedict, thank you for being with us and welcome to our program.
It's my pleasure.
Father Benedict, you have been traveling all around the world. Most recently, you've been in the Afram Plains in Ghana, before this in Bangui. But I want to go back to the beginning of your story. You were born in Lagos State in Nigeria, in a village. And I was wondering if you could tell us just in a few words, you're one of 13 children. If you could just give us a little picture of what life was like for you growing up.
I was born in Nigeria, in Badagry. Ikogazebe is a very small village. And one of 13 children, as you've rightly mentioned. It's a thing of joy growing in a big family for me. I am from a polygamous family. And when I say polygamous family, I mean a family where your father married more than one wife. So my dad married 3 wives. But at the end of the day, he got married in the church when the first wife left and the third wife died.
So your mother was the second and she was a Catholic?
Yes, so they got married in the church.
And you grew up as a Catholic then, your faith formation. When did you have a sense of your own vocation in this process of growing up?
My parish was built by the SMAs, and my parish priest was very active in animating youth and children. So I remember very well he used to organize biannual festival for the youths. And myself as a person, I like drama, I like poems, and from here I got this interest to become more involved in the church, and since then I've been very active in the church, and here I am today as a priest.
Father, the question about missionary work, you went out rather quickly then after your ordination, you went to Bangui, to the Central African Republic, and then later to Ghana. In mission work, what do you understand by mission? What does mission mean for you?
When we talk about mission, mission is first of all the mission of God. God is the owner of his mission. And mission is essentially Trinitarian, because the Father sent the Son through the power of the Holy Spirit sent the church, and the church sends her followers. So we as missionaries, we are only participating in that mission of God, the Trinitarian mission that has been handed over to the church. So to be a missionary, therefore, is to do the work of God, is to make God known to the people, is to help people to understand what it means to be a human person. And here now I'm talking about the incarnational aspect of mission, that Christ came into the world, became one of us so that we can become like God. And that is what mission is all about. We bring people closer to God so that they can understand better their human nature. That is what mission is all about.
And the fullness of their human dignity as people.
Exactly.
Father, you first went to Bangui, to the Central African Republic, where you then worked for an association, Mama Teresa. Now, it's not the Mother Teresa Sisters, but no. It was another association, particularly working with poverty and then I believe also HIV patients.
Yes.
Can you tell us what brought you first to Bangui, the capital of Central African Republic, and what was your work there? What was your activity, this mission work?
First of all, I am a missionary. So with the Society of African Missions, we are not ordained for our countries. So by virtue of being a missionary, it means after your ordination, you have to go out. So after my ordination, I was sent to Central African Republic.
Do you get to choose?
No.
No. You're simply yours.
No, because you have been formed for that. By virtue of being a missionary, you are open to the reality that you can be sent anywhere in Africa. And that is why we are Society of African Missions.
Ah, very good.
Yeah. But those who are outside Africa will be working with people of African origin.
Yes.
So that is the mandate of our society. That is
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I was just curious to know if you had a choice at all. But
no. You can discuss, of course, with your superiors, but you are ready to be a missionary. It means you are ready to go out of your country. Yeah.
And so you went then?
Yes, I went to Central African Republic. I was in a parish, St. Charles Luanga in Begua, but at the same time working with this association that was founded by the SMAs in order to help the HIV positive patients and orphans. So that was what I was doing. And it's interesting working with this group of people, because you realize that humanity is not what we think it used to be. When we are okay, we think we are strong. But when you are weak, you see the nothingness of man. The simplicity of man comes out when we are not capable again to do anything for ourselves. And that is where we need to help ourselves. That is where we need to help one another in order to grow, especially those who are sick.
How long were you in Bangui? How long were you working in this capacity?
I stayed in Bangui for 2 years. I was with this association and at the same time working in the parish for 2 years. And after 2 years, my superiors asked me to go to Ghana, Afram Plains. That was how I came to Ghana.
And that's how you came to Ghana?
Yes.
And you arrived directly at the Afram Plains?
Yes, Afram Plains.
Can you describe just geographically, visually, give us a picture, what are the Afram Plains?
Afram Plains is an area specifically meant for farmers. So it is a place with more than 50 villages with small churches or Christian communities. And most of the people in the Afram Plains are people coming from the northern part of Ghana, seeking greener pasture. They wanted to make ends meet, and therefore they were moving, looking for a place to farm. And then they settled in Afram Plains. But when SMAs came to Afram Plains some 26, 27 years ago, there were no roads in Afram Plains, no hospitals, no schools. So SMAs actually built schools, built roads, and clinics. And they invited the St. Louis sisters to join us in this mission work, which the St. Louis sisters are still doing up to now.
How many were you in this particular work of when you were in the Afram Plains, in this area that you're speaking about? 2
priests and 2 trained catechists. And then we have the volunteer catechists who also work with us. And both of us, the 2 priests, we went to Afram Plains the same day, and both of us are from Nigeria. So it wasn't easy, because we had to learn, we had to try to understand the mission in order to organize our pastoral activities.
What about the language?
The language was a challenge.
What is the language spoken there? You're speaking Hausa? No, what language are you?
That's Twi. Yeah, Twi. Twi. So we learned that for some time, but because the need of the mission is there, we were not able to learn it for a long time. But so each time when we celebrate, we always have the catechist to interpret for us.
Yes. But now you're speaking this language. You speak it?
A bit.
A little bit.
Not so well. I'm not so good in languages.
How big are the distances when we're speaking about going from one? You're saying there were 50 church outstations in more than 50 villages.
Yeah.
First of all, how big would a typical village be, and how far would you have to travel to go from one to the next to the next?
For instance, you may travel with your Hilos car on a very bad road. You may go maybe for 2 hours to go and meet maybe 5 or 10 people.
In the bush somewhere?
In the bush. And the 5 or 10 people, maybe 3 or 4 are communicants. But you have to go anyway, because that is the beginning of the church. That is where the faith is planted. So if you don't go, who will go? So it's a vast area.
It feels, I mean, the way you speak about it, it must be like the first apostles in a certain way, going out with the primary evangelization, first bearing the seed of the word, How do you carry this? I mean, it's an extraordinary privilege in many ways.
You are absolutely correct. It's a thing of joy to bring Christ to others. But what is more interesting is that we are not just bringing Christ to people, the people also are giving us Christ.
How?
When you come to a place to evangelize, before you go there, our early missionaries used to say, before you arrive, God is there. And if God is there in their midst, so you cannot say you have everything to give them. It is a symbiotic relationship. And if it is a symbiotic relationship, you must be humble enough to learn from the people, and then the people learn from you. So the seed of God is in every culture, and that is very important.
How do you discern? How do you discern when you arrive in a new culture? How do you discern what is positive, what is maybe perhaps not so good, and to try and encourage the good and let the not so good aside? How do you discern this to find this presence of God in the culture into which you're arriving?
The process of discernment requires listening. You need to observe, you need to listen. In observing the people and listening to them, you see the values in their culture, which you encourage, and whatever is base or is not so interesting about that culture will die a natural death. But the first thing is a missionary must be open. There must be approachability. You should be ready to welcome people. In welcoming people, then they learn something from you and you learn something from them.
Can you give concrete examples of how perhaps this enculturation process worked in your own personal experience?
I remember in Afram Plains when we got there, of course we do not have the language, but we have people around who could communicate very well with us in English. And another thing that we do is that every month we have a training for catechists. And this training for us is very important. This is where we listen to their problems and then we try to profess solutions if we can. And at the same time, as we come together to share the Word of God, and we allow them also to give their own explanation of the Word of God, then we see the strength in the culture and we build on that. So the process of enculturation actually requires patience and discernment.
So the catechists would be crucial, in fact, as a sounding board to enable you to move forward with the population at large. Mm-hmm. How many? You had 2 catechists supporting
trained
you?
catechists.
2 trained catechists.
Yes, and then we have the volunteer catechists in almost all the villages. Yeah, in almost all the villages.
What would have been the greatest challenge? Isolation, challenge of the language. What would have been the greatest challenge for you as a missionary in the Ephraim Plains?
Language is one. As I said before, I am not so great with languages. And sometimes you have something to say, but you lack the words, the appropriate words to express yourself, and it becomes a bit difficult. Or for example, I remember when you are in the church during liturgical celebration, during Mass, and you are preaching, you are saying one thing, and your catechist is translating another thing. It can be painful, because at the end of the day, you get feedback, and people will come and tell you, no, the catechist was not saying what you were saying. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. And apart from that, another problem would be, differences in culture. So I am from Nigeria. I was brought up in Nigeria in my village. I have my own ways of looking at realities, which may not exactly be the same as these people we consider the same reality. So based on this, sometimes I have to slow down. I have to slow down before making a decision. And for me, it doesn't make things work fast. So it doesn't make, and I don't really appreciate that, because it slows down the pace of. And you want to achieve this much, but at the end of the day, you are not able to achieve that. You mentioned the joy of the people. Was there some cultural welcome? Was there a cultural
For example, you would arrive to a village, and for them, what does a priest mean? When I can imagine for many of these small villages, they haven't perhaps never seen a priest before. How do you explain the man of God? How do you explain the role of the priest, the man of God who brings and bears the message of Christ?
I remember in the villages, whenever the priest is coming, it's a big feast for them. It's a thing of joy. But in some other places you go and there is nobody, they have all gone to the farm.
And you arrive.
So you arrive there, they had the program, you arrive there and there is nobody. They have all gone to the farm and you have wasted 2 hours going. You have to waste another 2 hours to go home. Yet, you just have to do what you have to do. But some other places, they are waiting for you. They are happy to have a priest. They are happy to have that Eucharistic celebration because they know that to have Mass is to have Christ. So for them it's very important. And you can see the preparations, the animation of the Mass. It tells you that, yes, these people are eager to hear the Word of God. And that encourages me a lot.
But I suppose there would have also been resistance. There's never... I can only imagine that, yes, there would have been those that have been happy to see you, but then perhaps those that practice, I suppose in this capacity, traditional African religions, who might not have been so happy to see you, or was this not the case? And then perhaps an additional question to this is, how far is still the traditional African religions a part of the daily life in many of these villages in the Afram Plains?
One good thing about Afram Plains is that we don't have tension between traditionalists and Christians. No. Unlike my hometown in Nigeria, where Muslim and Christians will be fighting in some places, not all the places. In Afram Plains, we have, I would say, there is peace. There is peace because they know that the missionaries are there to work for the development of the place. And what they cannot do, they wouldn't allow anybody to send away the priest, because nobody will come and do it. So they practice their traditional religion, yes, but they do not disturb the priest in doing their work. And along the line, you see even many people who are from these traditionalists, they come and they join the church. The father may be traditionalist and he allows the children to go to church, and there is no problem about that.
What do we understand by traditional African religions? It's rather a generic term. How does it live itself concretely in Ghana, in the Afram Plains?
When we talk about traditional African religion, we are talking about a religion where people believe in the existence of God, though they may have so many intermediaries to get to that God.
Ancestors or
yes,
spirits?
They have spirits, they have ancestors. So they have all these intermediaries between themselves and God. But the difference that Christianity is bringing is that you don't really need all these intermediaries. With Christ, you get straight to God. And for them, African traditional religion is a religion that appeals to senses. You want to see signs. You want to pour libation, you want to pour oil, you want to see what you are doing. And if those signs are not there, they believe that religion is not efficacious. And that is where Christianity has a lot to do in catechizing the people and educating them on the importance and the value of the Eucharist.
How do they understand the Eucharist? When you explained that this is the body and blood of Christ, do they accept, can they understand this? Is this something that through their culture they can accept?
Yes, because already they are used to signs and symbols. So in catechizing the people, telling them about the reality of the body and blood of Christ is not really a problem. But the problem is in getting the people and educating them, giving them Christian education. If not, I see a danger of transposing the idea of traditional religion into Christianity. So where you put everything together and you think all is the same.
Yes.
That we have to be careful.
Yes.
Yep.
Is there a knowledge of evil and is there also an expression of evil in the traditional African religions? How does evil manifest itself?
Yep. To the best of my knowledge, there is evil. And African traditional religion believe there is evil. So the presence of evil could be manifested when they see that you are not prospering, you are working and you are not doing well, or every time something disastrous is happening to you. I would dare to say that sometimes the mentality of the African traditional religion could be likened to the Jewish mentality.
How?
Where when there is evil, it is because you have done something evil. Therefore, evil is coming onto you. But Christianity teaches us that it's not necessarily the case. A good person, for example, Job, suffered not because he was an evil man. So evil then becomes a mystery that we need to accept in order to get to God. So evil is not something that was necessarily created by man, but it becomes a mystery that we may not be able to understand holistically.
If I stretch it the other way, we might, if we can draw that parallel, this prosperity gospel mentality sometimes you find in the United States, where if you are successful, it means you are blessed by God.
That is it.
And if you are blessed by God, you are more successful. If you are not successful, it means you're not blessed by God.
Yeah, I think that is a bit dangerous, because if you want to continue like that, at the end of the day, whoever is just and is not successful, then we can say is evil, which is not the case. So,
Father, what would be the greatest challenge that that would be the need, or rather, what is the greatest need you would see for the Afram Plains today, in the sense of there is a certain amount of primary evangelization, there has been a certain acceptance of the Catholic faith. It is like a brush fire, that the faith grows very quickly, but the roots have not been allowed to go into the soil. How would you, let's say, categorize the development of faith in the Afram Plains today?
First of all, I think the church in Afram Plains must emphasize the need of education. And that was why in the article I wrote, I was referring to education, that when you get the child, you get the parents. If we are able to educate the children and give them holistic education, in turn, they will evangelize their parents. And for me, priority therefore will be for education. And that was why we started the school before I left. And now we have over 450 kids in that school. And they've been able to get I bought a bus for them through the help of the donors. They have bought 2 other buses when I left. So which means the people, they are also seeing the need for education. And through education, we can catechize the children. So the school becomes, therefore, a citadel of learning. It becomes the platform where we can actually evangelize the people. So if we are able to do this, then gradually we'll realize that the parents will come to the church. And for me, it's very important. Education and evangelization, they go together.
And I suppose as well, it's a way for the next generation to move out of poverty.
Exactly.
Is poverty deep in this?
Very, very deep. Yes.
What do we understand by poverty? 1 meal a day? How do you describe poverty?
For some, it may be 1 meal a day. For others, and it may be not even getting anything at all. And for me, I would say the poverty in Afram Plains is not necessarily material poverty. It's more of psychological poverty.
Psychological?
Yes, psychological poverty in the sense that most of them are farmers. They have money, but they don't know how to use well their wealth. And that is where the church needs to come in to educate people even on how to manage what they have. For instance, the SMAs in Afram Plains, they built a silo for the farmers where they could keep their grains. And when the price goes up, they come, they sell, they get more profit, and they are able to take care of their children and maintain their family and continue with their farming. So mission in Afram Plains sincerely is incarnational, is bringing Christ, body and blood, close to the people. That is the mission in Afram Plains.
How can we help? How can those people with us today and on this program help the church in Ghana, in the Afram Plains?
I will say that there are so many ways in which you can help, so many. One would be education. I'm very strong on that because presently, I do talk with the parish priest. Presently, we don't have enough classroom for the kids. So if we are able to get a building, classroom for the children, that would be an added plus. And another thing would be maybe building a church. For example, our church in Afram Place is dilapidated, falling apart and all that. If we are able to build the church in Babaso itself, which is a center, where people can come from everywhere, come to the church and feel comfortable, feel the presence of God, I think it will go a long way to help the faith in Afram Place.
Father Benedict, thank you very much for having been with us today in our program.
It's my pleasure.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the work of Father Benedict, the work of the SMA in Africa, in Ghana, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.